Hey guys, I decided to film this video after receiving a large amount of questions and comments after making the Facebook post earlier today that I decided to take away my kids' toys. As you guys might have been able to tell in some of the before and after pictures that I posted, I didn't get rid of all of my kids' toys, but I did get rid of about 80% of them. So I just wanted to share with you guys why I decided to make such a drastic decision, seemingly drastic decision. And for that, I feel like it's only fair to provide a little bit of what was going on behind the scenes. A few weeks ago, Chris and I made the decision that I would go from being a full-time working mom out of the home to being a full-time working mom in the home, also known as being a stay-at-home mom. And we made that decision because, as some of you may know, William, in the past couple of years, has been diagnosed as having autism spectrum disorder. So he just requires a little bit more time, a little bit more guidance, a little bit more help. And we decided that there would be nobody better but one of his parents to be able to be there and provide that for him, as well as being there for Michael and just, getting to spend time with your kids. That's time you don't get back. And I consider myself to be incredibly lucky to even be able to make the decision to stay at home with my kids. There are so many people who would love to do that, can't. And so I consider myself incredibly blessed to be able to stay home with my boys again. And let me tell you, from having done it before, when I was a stay-at-home mom and army wife, to having a shift in perspective and having to go and be a full-time working mom out of the home and not being able to my kids, I realize even more so what an incredible blessing it is to be able to just spend that precious time with your children. So that being said, within the first couple of days of being home, I realized that I really wasn't getting to spend very much time with my kids because I was spending most of my time organizing my stuff, like our house. We have a lot of stuff. I feel like, this day and age, a lot of people have a lot of stuff, but for some reason I felt like, oh my goodness, we have so much stuff. I was organizing this and organizing that and getting, trying to figure out where to place things, and it was very quickly becoming overwhelming. And most of all, it was very quickly becoming disheartening when I realized that I wasn't being able to do that which I had stayed home to do, which is to be able to provide time to my kids. Because a lot of the time when William would say, "Mom, come play with us," I'd be like, "Hold on, Mom's cleaning this," or "Mom's cleaning that." And I mean, how many of us live that way where, we're so wrapped up trying to find a home for all of our little knickknacks that we aren't giving time to the little people that matter most. So after coming to that realization and aha moment, Chris came home from work one day and we sat down and I kind of, we had the come to Jesus conversation, and I said, I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy, but I feel like we have too much stuff. And we've had these these types of conversations, before, and sure, we've gotten rid of, a little bit here and a little bit there, but never really to the degree that we need to, or we feel that we need to. So we really made the decision to, as a family, strive to live lighter. And, I had someone, I think it was Emily earlier, really sweetly ask if I was, going to try and go the minimalist route. I don't think it's ever possible to live like a quote-unquote minimalist, how you imagine, those really sparse rooms that you see in pictures on Pinterest when you have little children, because I don't think those are super livable spaces, but that's just me. So I think that what we're aiming for is to live lighter, to, streamline things and truly try and get back to the family values that we hold dear as a family, which is to give time to one another, to other family members, to friends, doing things that we love and creating experiences and memories as a family. So, realizing all of this, I have been on a almost 3-week journey now to get zones in our house cleared out and thinned out as much as possible. My house kind of looks like a war zone in certain areas with mountains of things that need to go out, you know, sorted in different categories, and things that have just not been dealt with in other categories. It's a work in progress. It's slow. And to really get it done right, that's how it needs to go. You need to go through, you know, the things that you have with care, with the thought of, does this serve me? Does this serve my home? Does it serve, you know, the family vision? And go from there. So today's room of attack was the kids' toy room. I noticed a while back, and I feel like most parents are able to pick up on this notion, is there are toys that the children play with, and there are toys that they just don't. My children are two very loved little boys. For the longest time, William was the only child, the only grandchild, and the only great-grandchild for two families. That kid got a lot of stuff. And the child who came in and dethroned him of the only child status was his little brother. So they were still, as a, you know, unit, collecting a lot of stuff. They have a lot of people that love them dearly. You know, my family, Bob's family, now Chris's family, and our friends that love us. They have just shown so much love to these little boys, and sometimes, more frequently than not, it's in the, you know, since we live so far away from some of them, by sending toys or, you know, gifting toys for different things or and craft supplies and whatnot. And it just became overwhelming. And I started to notice that the children seemed almost gridlocked in this space. A lot of the time they would go into our toy room, pick out toys, and then they go to the living room, because the living room was a lot more tidy and, you know, had a lot more space than the toy room. So just think of it from an adult's perspective. If you're sitting at a desk and you have this much space to work with because the rest of the, you know, tabletop or desktop is covered in pens and paper clips and staplers and hole punchers, you're not going to be very productive, because the work, like, you're going to feel like, where do I put my hands? How do I move? It's just not a pleasant environment. Similarly, if you're at home, if you enjoy cooking or baking, if your countertop is completely covered in stuff, do you feel comfortable creating your meals or your desserts? Or does it become a mental block of, you know, this isn't even appetizing to try and work with because there's all this other stuff in the way? That mentality doesn't just go away because you're under the, you know, you're under 5 feet tall. For children, it's the exact same way. And I would argue even more so. Children can become so overwhelmed so quickly. And that can just be, you know, with choices of food, with choices, you know, regarding clothing, and even with choices regarding toys when it comes to playtime. And a long time ago, when I embarked on, you know, this new journey with William and helping a child with sensory processing issues, I had a wonderful OT share what I think is by far the greatest advice I've ever heard in regards to children, and that is that a child's work is to play. It's so simple, yet so beautiful. A childhood, you know, being a little one, you know, is all about exploring and creating and letting your imagination run wild and reading books that, you know, make you think, I'm going to Mars on my little paper, you know, spaceship, or I'm going to make a robot out of cardboard boxes, or I'm going to build a castle out of Legos. You know, that's what childhood is all about. It's about letting a child's imagination just grow And it's so vital to experience that as a little kid in order to be a well-rounded adult. That's my belief anyway. So when I looked at the space that my children had, to try and let that happen, I didn't feel that it was a space that was very conducive, excuse me, to that. I felt like there were too many options. They were being weighed down by the stuff. Just like I felt weighed down by the stuff in my house, I felt like they were being weighed down by the stuff in their toy room. And I feel like sometimes as parents, we want to give our kids the best, that we just maybe give them a little bit too much of the best, and we're really not letting them flourish the way that they need to. So, how we went about actually doing the decluttering is I sat William down at the kitchen table. I took a really big piece of, a legal pad of paper and a pen. And he loved it because it felt very official. He and Mom were sitting down at the table to get stuff done. So we sat down, and I had decided that I would let him keep 6 categories of toys. That could be of his choosing, but it could only be 6 categories. Everything else would have to be put away. So with a little bit of guidance from me, but mostly chosen by him, we went through and we made his 6 categories. And they ended up being blocks, cars, trains, and tracks. I kind of lumped that into one category. Magnetiles, Legos, and balls. So once we had chosen our 6 categories, I gave him further instruction as to what we would do with everything that was not a member of those 6 categories. I went out to the garage and picked up a massive 35-gallon tub, brought it inside, we cleaned it up, the 3 of us, and I gave him the instructions one more time. I said, okay, everything that does not fall under these 6 categories goes in here. And we designated spaces for each item, for items of each of the 6 categories, just to make the process later of putting things away to run a little smoother. And he really enjoyed it. My kid really likes sorting things out, and Michael really got into it too. So it worked out really well for us. So as we were sorting, it became very clear very quickly that even within those 6 categories, my children had way too much. To the point that when we were done, we had filled up to the brim the 35-gallon container of, all the toys that weren't in that, in those 6 categories, and we filled 2 additional containers after we proceeded to thin out the 6 categories. When it came down to cars, the way that we thinned those down, I said, okay, pick 25 cars. So by no means do my kids have nothing sitting in their toy room. I said, let's pick out 25 cars. And I said, pick out the ones that you really love playing with. And he did. He picked out 25 cars. They went into one of those little cloth hamper pop-up bin things. And we made a chalk label for it, stuck it on there, put it on the shelf. Same thing with the trains. I said, let's pick out 30 because my boys do like to play with their trains a little bit more than the cars, and there's 2 of them. Fights occur. So just to be preemptive on that, I let them pick out a few extra. So they picked out their 30 and they put them away. We again made another chalk label, put it on the shelf. The Magnetiles, those all just went into one container. The Legos have their own special plastic rolling container just because they're easier to keep in something that has a lid. So we did that for that. Other large plastic blocks, I did sort into 2 categories, wooden and plastic. Other large plastic box, I had these really cool toy boxes from IKEA. So one is housing all the plastic blocks, the other is housing all of the train tracks. The wood blocks, they went into their own little pop-up fabric bin as well. and we put everything away. When everything was said and done, we had cleared over 80% of their toys. My kids could care less. And that to me was, I have waited this long because I've thought about doing something like this before and I just didn't. Lack of time, lack of, emotional, mental preparation, what have you. I just put it off. But watching their reaction to having the bulk of their toys taken away was humbling. They were so happy. They went into that space. They grabbed what they normally, Michael went to the cars, William went to the blocks, and they pulled out what they wanted, and they played, and they had room to play. They didn't have to compete for space with all of these other toys that really weren't getting loved the way that they should have been. And they just really enjoyed themselves. William built castles and houses and, satellite stations on different planets. And Michael, took great gusto in knocking them over with his cars. So they had a really good time. They really engaged their imaginations, and they really enjoyed being in the space, which is exactly what I was looking to accomplish in this whole endeavor. So if there's anyone else out there thinking of doing this undertaking, I would highly encourage it, because it's an experience that as a parent is invaluable to observe happening with your children, and for children it's an experience it's invaluable to let them just be little. So I hope that helped and offered a little bit of an explanation as to why we decided that today would be the day that we got rid of our children's toys. Happy weekend, everyone.